Ready. Play.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is in the world, wherever you are tuning in from. I'm really pleased to have Steve Flink back with me today. We touch base from time to time. I think the last time was just after Rafa retired, but we often, probably in Australia we touch base as well. We normally have these chats during slams, often looking at men's singles, big matches, but now we're going to be looking at a WTA blockbuster final between Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka. Let's hone in on the women's side of the draw. We were just saying before I click record that there's two possibilities with a slam or any tournament for that matter. You can have utter chaos and drama and two unexpected finalists. That's great. Or you can get blockbuster affairs like at least the first semi-final was today, but also the upcoming final. So we've had some amazing. I mean, Iga's run that's obviously come to an end, by the way, Steve. I think we should touch on that. The 4-year run, but even the run that she's had at this tournament, which included matches with Rybakina, followed by Svitolina, and then today against Sabalenka. Just either some reflections on her 4-year Roland Garros run, but also her match with Sabalenka today.
Yeah, let me just start, John, with the first part of your question, which is the 4 years, 4 out of 5 years winning this title, was going for 4 in a row this year. We knew, I think all of us knew, she wasn't the same Iga coming into this tournament. She'd taken a couple of really severe losses against, she lost to Coco, she lost to Danielle Collins. She was not playing well on the clay leading up, which did not help. Then you mentioned the win over Rybakina. I think that did her quite a bit of good because she could have been out of there in straight sets, and that could have been devastating. Not that Rybakina is not a first-rate player, but she expects to beat her on clay. So she got out of that after trailing 6-1 to love, and then also after serving at 4-5 in the third to stay in the tournament. She ran out the last 3 games very comfortably and confidently. So followed it, as you said, with a win over Svitolina. So then my pre-tournament feelings, John, were that she was going to, I didn't think she had any chance at all if she was to get to Sabalenka prior to Rome. But coming off that uplifting win and then following it up with a solid performance against Svitolina, I was starting to, I actually had changed my mind. And I thought she would squeak one out. And after the second set, today, the way she came back to win the second after losing a hard-fought first set, where they each broke serve 4 times and Sabalenka served for it, and then finally Sabalenka pulled away and blitzed Iga in the tiebreak. But in any case, if she could have had a good third set today and lost 6-4 in the third or 7-5 in the third, I think she would have come away feeling better. But in some ways, I have to believe Iga is still not there mentally, because as brilliantly as Sabalenka played in winning 24-30 points in the final set, lost 6 points in 6 games, I felt like Iga needed to stay with it. Iga needed to at least prove to herself that she could take this down to the wire, and that therefore, but then in a strange way, she must feel as if somehow the first 2 sets were a bit wasted to go down 6-love in the third. I don't know. I hope she doesn't look at it that way. I hope it's not the glass half empty versus the glass half full. But I think she could look at it either way. But I think the third set dissection will be a bit troubling to her. So yes, the reign is over for now. It doesn't mean she couldn't come back to win this title again. But I'll say this, John, I don't think she's going to break Chrissy Everett's record of women's record of 7 titles. Okay. I think she might get a couple more in the future. I'll be surprised if she ties the record. I might give her 1 or 2 more. 2 more likely, I would say. But at one time, I would have thought she was a good bet to tie or break. Now, I'm not so sure. A lot will depend on what we see from her in the next 6 months. I mean, look, she was so impenetrable for so long in Paris. And yeah, she was match point down to Osaka last year. There were moments, but by and large, she was destroying people. And she believed it was her court. And she was starting to believe that again this year here after Rybakina, through Svitolina, and through the first 2 sets today. There was some spectacular tennis. But I think she leaves with a bit of a sour taste in her mouth. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, similarly, I think the nature of the third set, she talked about a lack of intensity in her post-match press conference to sort of explain sort of where things went wrong. I think it really surprised me how flat she was in that third set, mainly because we'd seen in the two women's semifinals yesterday and the first two sets today in the beginning of the third, so many momentum swings. I mean, yesterday we had Coco, I think, racing into a 4-1 double break advantage over Madison Keys. She fights back. Suddenly they're in a dogfight and they're going into a tie break and you don't know which way it's going. Then the beginning of the second set, it's the other way around and it's Coco who's up a double break, but that then goes and somehow she manages to get over the line.
Yeah.
And the third set, you didn't know which way was going to go either way, and it ends up being a 6-1. But even the Miller-Andreeva match, which obviously was a straight sets result, so you wouldn't think there were too many momentum shifts. There were so many, even in the tiebreak. You didn't really know which way it was going, and so many. I mean, Miller as well had a breakup, I think, in the second set. Today was so similar. We saw a double break advantage. I wonder whether the roof being closed. I've been in Roland Garros when that roof is closed and it's very muggy. Remember the Rafa match with Sasha a few years ago when they just couldn't hit through each other and they had like 1.5 to 2 hour sets before Zverev got injured. And I felt same because they just kept breaking serves so often, both yesterday and also today in that first set.
Yeah, but here's the thing, John. Just let me quickly interject, if I may. You're right, and I think you're so right to attribute it to. It has to be the roof to some degree. You would think it actually would help the server. No wind, no sun, perfect conditions, but it didn't. In fairness to both players, John, they both were returning serve brilliantly, especially off second serves. They were so aggressive. Nobody could get away with a mediocre second serve. No. And even when Sabalenka would try to take a bit off her first serve, Iga would just tag it. So I felt like credit to them for the way they returned, but it was more breaks than you would expect. And there's another thing I want to mention about that first set. It's 4-1 Sabalenka, game point for 5-1. She thinks she served an ace. Iga's standing there. She thinks she's been aced. And then the umpire informs them both that it was a let. And Sabalenka lost her serve there and lost it again and was back in a real fierce fight. Had she won that point for 5-1, this whole match could have turned out. It could have been maybe a lot easier for her, possibly. But certainly that set would have been virtually in the bag at 5-1. So that was interesting. And Iga then really went into full flow for a while and played great the rest of the set. But listen, to Sabalenka's credit, John, I like the way she pulled herself together at 4-5 after things seemed to be getting away from her and served a good game. And then even though she didn't serve out the set, she played a great tiebreak. And I like also the way she responded in the third, because it must have been a little bit disappointing having won a hard-fought first set to not be able to put Iga away in straight. And she got outplayed and lost that set 6-4, but then blitzed her in the third set. So from Sabalenka's standpoint, I was very impressed once more with her composure now, because a year or two ago, this is the kind of match, particularly after the second set loss, that she might lose 6-2 in the third and lose it mentally. And that right now, she's not beating herself anymore. There may be brief stretches of attention and where she's making too many errors, but then she rebuilds her game and is able to fight her way through those tough stretches.
When you think of huge momentum shifts in matches, and it's an ability to still manage to sort of resist that momentum change, or at least swing it back again in your favor. And I think you've really got to dig deep. And I think she dug deep today, just like I think Boisson did yesterday in the match with Miller-Andreeva, but especially Coco Gauff to resist again some of those momentum swings that went against her. And
how about Boisson also against Pegula? Did a great job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then regarding Sabalenka today, when you're the sort of the front runner and the momentum goes against you, and then you're the front runner again and it goes against you again. So that was kind of how the first set went, with the double break advantage, 4 games in a row for Riga. Suddenly you're up against it. You're serving a stay in the first set. You hold on, as you said, for 5-all, but still the momentum feels like it's with Iga. Sabalenka gets the break and you're thinking, wow, she's got it together again. Yeah. But again, the momentum was with Iga going into that tiebreak, and yet she wins it 7-1.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, the tiebreak and the third set impressed me greatly when it came to Sabalenka. And I think Iga was a bit surprised too. because I think Iga was thinking the way you just described it. She liked where she was heading into that tiebreak because she not only fought from 2 breaks down in the early stages, she was immediately down 3-love 2 breaks. So she not only did that, but she stopped Sabalenka from serving out the set. So she had to have felt like, okay, here's my chance now. If I can string together some really aggressive points, play with some controlled aggression, I can win this set. And you're right, that there are a lot of momentum shifts to be sure. But I thought it was really enjoyable tennis from both the first 2 sets. Third set was a very impressive display from Sabalenka, and it was disappointing from the other side of the net that Iga couldn't stay with her. But we got 2 great sets, I thought.
Indeed. All right. Before today, regarding Sabalenka's run to the final, and before today, obviously before the semi-final, I was very impressed with the way Aryna dealt with some quite tricky opponents, I would suggest, all in straight sets. Danilovic, I thought, was going to pose a threat. I'm not necessarily saying I thought that she would win that particular third round encounter, but she saw off Danilovic very easy. Anisimova, she had not a very favorable head-to-head, 2-5. I think Aryna was losing that, and yet 5-3, she brushed her aside. She had to come from behind against Qin Wenjing, who she just recently lost to in Rome as well. So I was pretty impressed with Aryna, but like you, I thought Iga would just squeak it out today. And again, momentum. That second set, Iga served so well. I think she won 75% of her second serve points, which is pretty impressive, bearing in mind how Aryna was killing that second serve in the first set. But then, so you think, okay, we're going into a third set here. You know, we saw how the third set panned out against Rybakina, when Rybakina was the front runner but got reeled in. And I just thought that somehow Iga would get over the line with her experience, especially on Philippe Chatrier. But it was Aryna Sabalenka who got it. But anyway, Aryna's run to the final. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you summed it up well. I mean, I think if you look at collectively at those matches, it's a very impressive tournament. You know, today's you dropped a set, but I mean, against all these players, there were many opportunities to drop sets along the way. And as you mentioned, bad head-to-head record against Anisimova. Zhang had beaten her the last time and on clay, and she avenged that one nicely from 4-2 down in the first set. So I'm impressed that when she's had to produce, she's done so and then some. So I must say, you know, I'm impressed with Coco, and I know we're going to talk about Coco next, but I really like the way Sabalenka, the mindset she's going to have going into this final. I think and frankly, I think that loss to Zhang, she'd already beaten Coco in Madrid. I think she thought she was ready for the French. To tell you the truth, I think her mind all along was on, okay, I've got a clay title, and I'm in good shape, and I've got enough matches, and Roland Garros is the priority. And she's showing that right now.
Yeah, I spoke to a member of Aryna's team last year, Gavin McMillan, and he told me how upset they were about the French Open. You know, it was just after she'd won the US Open, and we were reflecting on some bigger picture stuff as well as that US Open title win. And obviously she was sick in her quarterfinal last year with Mira Andreeva, and there was just a couple of points in that. And, you know, it's incredible because I didn't really think that maybe clay was going to be maybe her best surface, Madrid aside. And I thought if there was a slam that Sabalenka was going to miss out on, it may well be the French Open. I was factoring in the Iga effect there with a lot of that. And I thought that Iga was going to end up denying maybe Coco, maybe Aryna, and many other players a French Open, just like Rafa probably did so many times. And yet here we are. We've got a Sabalenka Coco Gauff final. One other thing I want to mention on Aryna as well is just her remarkable consistency. We think about the travails that she had with her serve sort of in 2022. And yet 2022, I think, just trying to think, I think she was in a Wimbledon semi-final that year. Then she was in the US Open semi-final where she lost to Iga, funny enough, in 3 sets, being a breakup in the third set. Right. Mental fragilities were being questioned. You know, she had this Grand Slam semi-final run. And yet now, then the beginning of 23, she wins in Australia. She gets to the semis in Paris. She gets to the semis at Wimbledon in 23. I think it might have been 21 that she was in the semis at Wimbledon. But, you know, it's just incredible consistency. US Open final 23, Australian Open final 24. What else in 24? Quarterfinals. So she's always, whenever she plays, she's always got to the quarterfinals for about the last 3 years or further. That quarterfinal loss, obviously, was a year ago.
And nearly won the Australian 3 years in a row. It took a really extraordinary performance from Keys to stop her this year, and she didn't disgrace herself in that loss. So No, you're right. The consistency, and this is not what we would have expected. I think back, what I love about this final coming up is I think back to when Coco came from behind to defeat her in that U.S. Open final in 23, and how fragile she still was. You talked about the serve. She had already started the serve. She'd largely put that back together by then. Mm-hmm. But her mental toughness was sometimes lacking. And you watched a match like that, and she wins the first set, and Coco turns the corner in the second set. They never felt, once they went into the third, it was going to be anything other than a Gauff triumph. Because that's the way Sabalenka handled herself in those days, and I just feel like where she's come in the last 2 years, and your summary of the Grand Slam results is proof of that. Always in the running, always in the thick of thing at the majors, played very few bad matches, even in defeat. Mm-hmm. And now here she is on the verge of winning her first French Open, where I think she'd be very worthy of it. Now, are you saying, do you think right now clay is her best surface?
No.
Oh, I misunderstood you then. Okay.
No, it's just caught me by surprise that Gavin McMillan, he was her biomechanics guru. He was actually in her box today and often is at the big tournaments. He just helped her with her serve in a big way. No, what caught me by surprise was that after winning the US Open and Australian Open of last year, great year for her, incredible consistency across all the tournaments. I can understand how Wimbledon would have bothered him because, of course, she didn't play Wimbledon because of injury, and that's a tournament that I do have her down as winning one day, maybe even this year.
Right.
So that I've earmarked for her. I always thought that she might get denied on clay because I've always thought that was her weakest environment, Madrid aside, and the ego factor. But now it doesn't seem to matter. She's just incredible wherever she goes.
That, you just put your finger on it. That's exactly the way I feel. It doesn't matter so much anymore. She looks to be almost as comfortable on the clay as she does on hard, which until now I would say was her best. And like you, I expect Wimbledon to come into her collection, if not this year, next year, but it's going to happen soon.
I've always earmarked Wimbledon for her. I think she's got the game. She's always enjoyed good runs there. She was denied, obviously, last year with the injury, as I said, that I remember she picked up in Berlin. And it may well have been her year, especially as Wimbledon has been a little bit random in terms of finalists and winners over the last 2 or 3 years. That really, I always thought that she would be there. But it will happen. Whereas if you'd have said to me probably a year ago or even a bit less, I thought maybe the French, because I've got her down. She's the one player at the beginning of every year. I think, is someone going to win the Calendar Slam this year? There's only one possible person, and it is her. But I always thought it would be the French Open that might well remain elusive. And I certainly have her down as completing or coming close to completing the Calendar Slam not the Calendar Slam, sorry, but the Career Slam, I should say. But again, it was always this French Open doubt, her movement on the clay. But I think she's just so good, it doesn't really matter anymore.
No, absolutely right, which is a real testament to her, that she's worked that hard to become that complete as a player and be that versatile on all surfaces, as well as becoming mentally much more durable and much able to withstand some difficulties much more easily than she ever did in the past. And it's a transformation in many ways across these last 18 months.
Absolutely. All right, let's move over to her upcoming opponent, who beat Boisson today in straight sets. That's Coco Gauff, obviously winning 6-1, 6-2 over the French woman. Before we elaborate more on Coco and her chances in the final on Saturday, I do want to have a quick word on Boisson. Do you remember anything quite like this run or anything similar in all the decades of tennis watching that you've, enjoyed?
No, I honestly don't. I've been racking my brain for that. It's a very unusual situation. And, I believe it was Davenport telling the story that I maybe it was Schiavone. I don't know. Somebody was telling a story about Boisson losing to some junior 6 weeks ago. I mean,
Okay.
it's inexplicable to me that she could, and it's not accidental because you can't. You can fault Pegula for not exploiting her experience. You can fault Andreeva for being a bit immature at times. And as you said, she had the break in the second. She was up 3-0. Second set, she had set points in the first set. So why didn't they come through when it counted? On the other hand, Boisson is so poised, and she's got so many. She can do so many things out there. There's a lot of variety in her game, and she's a great competitor. So I watch her, and I see somebody that I don't think this was just a surprise run where she caught these leading players off guard, and we're never going to hear from her again. I think it's the start of something significant. How far she goes, whether it's top 10, I don't know. But that was more than just the French crowd propelling her into the latter stages of this tournament. It was her own poise under pressure and her own shot-making capabilities. She's got a very good first serve as well. She really impressed me because I saw a lot of the Pegula match. I saw all of the Andreeva match and everything. Now, obviously, the wind came out of her sails today. I thought Coco, at least, Coco was beautifully coached and schooled and poised for this match because she just decided, okay, now I'm not giving her anything and I'm going to keep the ball deep and I'm really going to make her come up. She's going to get no help from me and I'm going to defend when I have to. And there's going to be no carelessness on my side of the net. I'm going to make her beat me. And she did that. I mean, one little lapse when she lost her serve at 3-1 in the second set, and then she got it right back. And rest of the way, I think lost one or two more points to close it out over the last 3 games. So that was partly about Coco being ready for the occasion and Boisson, everything sort of catching up to her today. But nonetheless, I'm curious to get your feeling because I feel like there could be some exciting things ahead for her.
I think on the clay, particularly, she will probably have a few more runs and maybe, who knows, maybe a WTA 250 title or something like that. She can run around the backhand pretty easily, especially on the serve. Her backhand is sort of, she either hits it obviously two-handed or hits the slice. I don't think it's obviously not her strongest shot. Forehand, she's pretty solid on, in fact, sometimes more than solid. I think today there was a couple of factors that I think Coco wins the match no matter, but in terms of the scoreline and the comfort that Coco had, there was a couple of things. You talked about the wind out of the sails. I do think physically Boisson has had a tough 10 days.
Yes.
She had a 3-set win over her compatriot a couple of rounds ago, Jacquemont. She had even though that was straight sets over Mira Andreeva, that was a really physical match. I think it went beyond 2 hours. And also the quarterfinal, of course, 3 sets over Pegula. So I did see her physically, even in the first set. I just wonder if she was a bit tight physically. The other thing that I thought, talking of wind out the sails, is by Coco racing into that early lead, the crowd didn't really have anything to really hang on to. Yeah. Yes, the break back at 3-2, but I'm not sure if she or the crowd believed that was the beginning of a renaissance at all. And yeah, Coco just snuffed it all out. And yeah, absolutely. Credit to her.
But I think that's a good, sober, realistic assessment. I'm not saying that Boisson is headed for number 1 in the world, but what I am saying is I definitely see top 20 potential and maybe top 10. Not overnight, but I also believe that she can, with the kind of tools that she's got, particularly the forehand, which you interestingly enough said was sometimes more than solid.
Yeah.
That's the part that surprised me the most, was when she had to, there were long stretches in the Pegula match where I felt it was completely in Jess's control. And then suddenly Boisson would start erupting off the forehand. She started opening up her wings and hitting out freely. And I said, where is this coming from? So you don't know when she's going to sort of unleash more aggressive forehands. The backhand does need to improve. I agree. Right now, I'd say it's a pretty ordinary two-hander. The slice is okay, but not great. That side needs to improve, and the serve needs to improve. But I feel like she has a lot of match playing acumen, and she's good, very good head for the game. And that when you make a run like this, okay, yes, the expectations grow, but a light goes off inside too. And I think she's going to see some opportunities ahead.
She was doing very well on the ITF tour until about a year ago when she ruptured her ACL, and that obviously destroyed her French Open chances then. But she's more than made up for it now. I'd like to see her performing as well, or nearly as well, perhaps on other surfaces. I mean, she's top 100 now easily, considering she went into the tournament, I think, at 361.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I have her ceiling quite as high as you do. You're sort of saying top 20, and then we'll see. I'm wondering if this might not necessarily be the peak in terms of her ranking, and I think top 50 is there, but I'm thinking somewhere between 20 and 50. But time will tell, and we'll revisit this in a couple of years, Steve, and we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And frankly, I hope you're wrong. Not that I want you to be wrong, but I just mean this would be a player that fans would love to watch all over the world. She's very appealing in her way. Absolutely. And very different. So I hope it's closer to my assessment because I want to see more of her in big tournaments.
All right. Couple of questions on Coco I have for you, sort of big picture ones. First of all, do you remember the first time you saw her play?
I didn't watch.
I remember her at Wimbledon in 2019 with that incredible win she had over Venus Williams. That was like her landmark.
Yeah. That was the first full match for me. Yeah. I had glimpses before then. I saw the Venus match, and interestingly enough, I was actually flying. I was on a flight to Wimbledon that day.
Okay.
But luckily for me, I had used my miles, and I was in business class, and American Airlines at that time, you could get the coverage. You could get all nice. BBC coverage. So I saw it on the flight. That was very impressive. Going out there and beating this 5-time champion, and who she clearly would have idolized before then. So that was my first good look at her. Maybe I had glimpses before then.
The other part of Coco big picture is Coco on clay is a thing. And yet Chris Evert, we already touched on at the beginning of the show, but really this century, yes, Serena Williams has won French Opens, but on the men's side, we haven't really, I think we haven't seen one since Agassi, I don't think, winning the French Open. Am I right? On the men's side, I think we've not had a French Open men's winner since, American men's winner since Andre Agassi, have we?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Because then after Andre retired, it was, obviously we had Roddick going after it, never coming close. Yeah, it was Andre.
So, and on the women's side, obviously we had Serena, but a bit like with Sabalenka right now, Serena was just too good not to win a couple of French Opens. And so she did. But Coco on clay is a thing. It's probably a better surface for her than grass even. Clay and hard, it doesn't really matter. She's always had the eager problem, but I think she's getting over that, even if she had to play eager in the final. But that's the thing. I mean, Americans on clay, the last, let's say, 25 years at least, has been a question that us Europeans pose, if you like, between April and June every year. But Coco is meeting it head on.
You're so right. And I think she feels the way you do, John, is that she talked about the fact that one time I think she thought maybe the breakthrough would be here. And she was in the finals and lost to Iga soundly, but it was impressive to see her in the finals that year. And then, of course, she ends up winning her first at the U.S. Open on the hard. So she's at the stage now we need to see. We haven't seen great stuff from her yet at Wimbledon. I mean, we're waiting for that. I'm still waiting for that. And I think it can happen. But I don't think there's a lot to distinguish her now when it comes to hard court tennis and clay court tennis. It's a thin line, and I think she's almost as comfortable on the clay. So in that sense, I think she'll go in a good state of mind against Sabalenka. On the other hand, she knows how tough it was dealing with in different clay court conditions in Spain there in the Madrid final against Sabalenka.
Oh, yeah.
So maybe she feels like in a strange way she benefits with her ability to defend on the slower clay of Roland Garros. Might help her slightly.
Yep, I think you might be right, but we'll come to that shortly.
Okay.
Her run to the final has included, I think both players, actually, just looking at their runs, they've both been tested a little bit. For Coco in particular, it was against, obviously, Madison Keys in the quarterfinal. For Aryna, obviously, it was today going 3 sets, I think. So therefore, they've both dropped one. But that'll also be fresh enough that neither of their runs was super taxing in the way that Boisson maybe ran out of steam today, for example. I mean, Gauff has had straight sets wins over Gadetsky, Valentova, Buskova, and Alexandrova before that quarterfinal 3-set win. And then the straight sets win over Boisson today was somewhere around about an hour and a half, but it was fairly comfortable for her physically. And so, yeah, what have you made of her run?
I've been impressed. I mean, the one match I was concerned about that Keys match. You talked about, you alluded to it. It was about the momentum shifts. It was also not high quality. That's why I was glad she gathered herself today and played a much higher level match from her end of the court. The Keys match was strange in that, Keys should have had not only 4-1 in the first set, but 40-15. She could have won that set a lot sooner.
Yeah.
And then had to squeak out a tiebreak. And then second set, as you say, a 4-1 lead and for Coco. And now Keys breaks back twice and gets to 4-all and loses the set. And then Coco took over from there. I felt that was kind of an uneven performance. I didn't like all the double faults in that match or particularly like the way she was executing the forehand. But I thought today, she shut the crowd out and obviously built the lead early and didn't have to go through too much apprehension. But aside from the Keys match, I like the way she looks. And I think I expect her to play very well in the final, win or lose, I must say, because I think that the matchup is comfortable for both players. I don't think either one fears the other. I think Coco is very good at diffusing Sabalenka's power, and Sabalenka she stays on task and stays aggressive. And she's got, I think Coco's got a very good first serve, but all told, I would give Sabalenka the slight edge on the serve. And I'd also give her the edge on second serve return. So I think that in the end that might be what wins the match, is Sabalenka's first serve and her second serve return. That's why I favor her in the final, but not with a lot of confidence. I mean, I think it could very well be a fairly tight 3-set match.
So 5 each is the head-to-head. They first met on a hard court in Lexington in 2020, 5 years ago. That match was won by Coco. Aryna wins the next one, also on hard in Ostrava. Coco wins their first encounter on clay in Rome, Paris, similarities. Toronto hard went the way of Coco, and they keep exchanging wins here. As you can see, Indian Wells going the way of Sabalenka in 2023. That's a sort of a much slower surface, so it's quite difficult to garner too much data from all of these matches. And then coming up to the more recent encounters, that US Open final of 23. So there's a Grand Slam final between them that went the way of Coco. We've got a match this year, also in a final in Madrid on clay, but Madrid is a bit of an outlier in the season. So I think it's really difficult to garner something concrete from their head-to-heads because there's stuff in favor of both of them at 5-all.
Absolutely right. There was a very important match they played too in the semis of the Australian several months after the U.S. Open final. And Coco was serving at 6-5, 30 long first set, and it all turned there. She didn't serve it out. She lost the set. She lost the match in straight. But I feel like, again, that gave Sabalenka a temporary feeling of relief to avenge the loss, but neither one, at this stage, it's hard for me to see either one of them going on a tear against each other. It's going to be a fairly close, hard-fought rivalry, and I expect that the final on Saturday is going to be, as I say, very tight and come down to some very big points. I feel like in the end, Sabalenka wins in 3. Okay. But I give Coco maybe a 47-48% chance.
Yeah, I think it's that close as well. I think I'm going the same as you, but I can't see a beatdown for either player. I think the conditions might end up favoring Coco if they're slow and stodgy like they have in the last few days with she can defend for all her life, and just maybe Sabalenka might find it more difficult to hit through Coco. If the roof is open, I think that might. It's funny, we started this episode because you and I do think of roof closing, indoor conditions, especially that European indoor season, quickening up the courts. But what I find is roof closing at huge Grand Slam arenas, like the one in Paris, they tend to sort of, if it's muggy outside, let's say, like it has been in Paris today in the last few days, and it was in Paris in 2022 towards the end of the tournament when I was there, that sort of gets replicated and even double or trebled inside, which is why I remember Rafa in that semi-final with Zverev just absolutely soaked his t-shirt and shorts because it was so muggy. You don't get
John,
that.
John, just a quick comment. I have to laugh when you say that. Then you're right. That was particularly, it was like he'd just come out of a swimming pool. But on the other hand, Rafa, of course, was always perspired profusely. It was amazing. He would laugh about it himself. But even that day, it went even to another level.
Yeah, it did. But it also made, as I say, it made it really slow and stodgy, and we know how that ended. And yet, I'm with you. You know, it's a 51, 52, 53. Choose a number just in the low 50s for Aryna. And therefore, that indicates obviously a tight affair and a 3-set win one way or another for Aryna. But I would not be surprised if Coco gets her first French Open title. And I do think now that she's earmarked to win one, because I think she's over the Iga matchup issue. She's won a couple of matches against her in the last 12 months. So, yeah.
But you touched on something important, John, that I wanted to follow up on, because the slow court.
Yep.
It's interesting because Iga didn't want to try and defend against Sabalenka. Iga wanted to beat her to the punch. She wanted to be very aggressive. They weren't having many rallies. At one stage, you know, I think even after 2 sets, they'd have 4 rallies over 9 shots.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coco's not going to play it that way. That's what's going to make this very intriguing. Coco will be willing to defend. Not that she won't be aggressive on her own serve when she can be too. And so Sabalenka's challenge will be different. She may be forced to go to win some tough 14, 16, 18 stroke exchanges. And that's going to test her in a way that she wasn't tested today.
The stat, actually, that was probably the stat that stood out for me most. When I looked at the stats after today's match, I looked at about, I think, 60 or 70% of the points were 4 shots or under.
Yeah.
And that was often down to the returns that both of them were putting in, especially in the first set, but Aryna generally as well in the third. That was just killing the Iga serve at times, and even Aryna's as well. And again, that comes down to those slower conditions. And then also, actually, Iga won most rallies over 5 shots, so the 5 to 9 shot and 9 to plus shot rally. It was that she was just getting killed by losing 60 or 70%, and there were so many. You know, I think of the whatever percent. I just did a rough calculation in my head because I remember seeing it, and it was about 60 to 70% of those points were won by Aryna, and that's where the match was won and lost today. But as you say, I don't think whatever conditions we get, but especially if it's slow, she'll get Coco losing patience in a way, maybe like Iga did today.
Yeah, no, Coco will not. And Coco, not to take anything away from Iga, because Iga moves really well. And her court coverage was definitely better than Sabalenka's. And Coco's will be too. But the question is, how well will she defend? And when she is trying to be aggressive, will that Coco forehand hold up? That's always, to me, a lingering question. She didn't need to be concerned about that at all today in the semifinals, because she wasn't going for it very often. But she will be going for it at times against Sabalenka because it'll be a necessity. So I think it's a great matchup. I rarely come away from one of their clashes not having enjoyed myself.
Indeed. Well, fingers crossed we get a similarly exciting clash on Saturday. Big thanks for joining me today, Steve.
Thank you, John. Enjoyed it as always.
Stagnant with her feet as well. And if you watch Iga play, her feet never stop. They never stop. And so her feet not stopping causes her racket head in a lot of ways not to stop either. So there's that beautiful, balance that Iga has where it's like bam, 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 bam. Whereas I think sometimes with Coco, it's like one big plodding step hit. And I think that's part of the problem is her footwork. And then that slows her racket head down. So she has to figure out a way. Either am I going to hit the crap out of this forehand and really let it go like she does with the backhand, is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. Or am I going to play a defensive forehand and be a little bit more like a Halep or a Wozniacki that never made a mistake on the forehand, even though both of them have had much weaker forehands, and that's where their breakdown would come. They just went to a place of, I'm not going to miss. And then I'm going to use my speed around the court to set up my backhand, and I'm going to frustrate my opponent.
You've been to the French Open final. Your breakthrough, at least standout result at the beginning of your career, was on grass against Venus. You've been very solid on the hard courts. Is there a slam in particular that you go, I think that's, if I'm going to get one, the first one might come here, there, or where?
Well, I don't know. I mean, everyone, I'm like, I think this is the first one. So I don't know. I mean, obviously now going to the French, I do have a lot of confidence on this surface. But I'm not really thinking about that. I feel like, in the past I was, and it gave me some like defeats that I feel like I shouldn't have lost, maybe more so my head. So going in now, I mean, I feel like, everyone could be the one, but I think I have to just take it a match at a time and just feel it out and enjoy it. I think when you focus too much on the destination, you don't enjoy the journey there. So now I want to focus more on the journey, and if the destination gets there, that's great.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss out on all things tennis.